Welcome to Frank's Fables. Before we dive into the story, comment where you're watching from, and if you believe in powerful and meaningful storytelling, be sure to like and subscribe for more. Mr. Woodward lay awake in his small, one-bedroom apartment in Hollow Creek, staring up at the ceiling with eyes that refused to close. No matter how many times he turned on his side or adjusted his pillows, sleep eluded him. He had tried reading, sipping warm tea, and even counting to 100, but nothing worked. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of the house where he had grown up as a foster child, ominous shadows on the walls, a creaking door at the end of the hallway, footsteps in the night. Those echoes of the past refused to leave him, continuing to remind him of the harsh reality he once faced. After what seemed like hours, the alarm clock finally chimed, announcing the start of another day. He sat up, wiped the dampness from his brow, and resolved to greet his middle school students with as much enthusiasm as he could muster. Outside, a cold breeze swept through the quiet morning streets. Mr. Woodward, a man in his late 20s, walked to Brookhaven School with his shoulders slightly hunched against the chill. The sun had barely risen, the weak daylight tinted with a grayness that matched his mood. Despite the weather and the haunting memories, he reminded himself that his students needed him. As a math teacher, he strove to be more than just an instructor scribbling numbers on the chalkboard. He wanted to be a guiding figure, the kind of adult he wished he had growing up. So each day, as he stepped onto the campus, he planted his feet firmly and forced a gentle smile. If he managed to see just one child's eyes light up in understanding, it would be worth the nightly battles he waged against his past. That morning, the corridors of Brookhaven School were lined with vibrant posters announcing an upcoming science fair. Students hurried around in small clusters, chattering about their projects, exchanging rumors about upcoming tests, and gossiping about who liked whom. Lockers clanged, shoes squeaked on the polished floors, and the air smelled faintly of cleaning solution. A place of learning and safety, Brookhaven was an environment Mr. Woodward cherished. It was a world away from the fear that still gripped him at night. He reached his classroom door, nodded politely at Ms. Harmon, a fellow teacher who was walking by with a stack of textbooks under her arm, and stepped inside. Ms. Harmon gave him a quick smile before disappearing down the hallway. Mr. Woodward's room was orderly, with rows of desks arranged so every student had a clear view of the whiteboard. On his desk, a neat stack of worksheets awaited distribution. He inhaled slowly, allowing the familiar chalky scent of the classroom to center him. In the first period, the students trickled in, chattering brightly. Some rummaged through backpacks, while others just sank into their chairs, eyes already glazed with early morning fatigue. It was amidst this ordinary bustle that Mr. Woodward spotted Jacob. The boy slipped into the classroom silently and made his way to a seat in the far back corner. With messy hair and large, anxious eyes, Jacob avoided eye contact, keeping his gaze on the floor. He was a slight figure, seemingly swallowed by the oversized sweater he wore. In the chaotic energy of a classroom, he stood out precisely because he tried so hard not to stand out at all. Mr. Woodward's eyes narrowed in concern. He recalled noticing the bruises on Jacob's arms the week before, faint discolorations that the boy attempted to hide. At the time, Mr. Woodward had asked casually if Jacob was all right. He remembered the boy freezing, as though he'd been caught doing something wrong, and then hurriedly mumbling some excuse about falling off his skateboard. Though Mr. Woodward had tried to coax out more details, Jacob had abruptly clammed up and rushed away as soon as class ended. Mr. Woodward didn't push further that day, but he'd been watching Jacob more closely ever since. That morning, as he handed out a pop quiz, Mr. Woodward paused at Jacob's desk. He saw new bruises, purple marks that peeked out from beneath the boy's sleeves. A spike of alarm went through him, and he swallowed. Jacob quickly pulled his sleeves down, his face flushing with shame or fear. Mr. Woodward tried to offer him a small smile. "If you need more time on the quiz, just let me know," he whispered. Jacob nodded without looking up. Throughout the class, Mr. Woodward found himself noticing each of Jacob's gestures. The tense jaw, the way he recoiled whenever someone brushed past him, and the tearful flicker in his eyes that betrayed a deep, gnawing anxiety. These were the same signs Mr. Woodward had once displayed in his youth. He recognized them almost instinctively. Yet he also remembered how important it was for a scared child not to feel cornered. He decided he would talk to Jacob after class, privately, and see if he could glean more about the situation. When the bell rang, most students bounded out of the room, eager for their next class. Jacob lingered, slowly gathering his belongings. Mr. Woodward approached him softly. He noticed Ms. Harmon linger at the classroom door, clearly concerned about the quiet boy. She did not intrude, but offered Mr. Woodward a supportive nod before heading off. Mr. Woodward spoke gently. "Jacob, is there anything you want to talk about? You can speak to me about anything. I promise I'll listen." The boy shrugged, eyes still downcast. "I'm fine," he said, voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Woodward had heard that tone before, from children too frightened to voice the truth. He did not want to push too hard, but concern radiated through him. "If anything's bothering you," he said, "remember that we're here to help, okay?" Jacob mumbled a short "thank you," and hurried out of the room. Mr. Woodward watched him go, feeling his heart sink. Memories of his own childhood flooded back. Nights spent cowering in corners, forced to lie about bruises, terrified that no one would believe him if he did speak up. He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. He needed a plan, a way to help Jacob without frightening him further. That day passed in a blur of numbers and formulas. In each subsequent class, Mr. Woodward tried to summon the same energy and dedication he always poured into his teaching, but Jacob's face lingered in the back of his mind. He also reflected on the many times teachers had either ignored his own bruises or accepted the flimsy excuses he offered. He recalled how badly he had wished for even one adult to see past his lies and help him break free from the cycle of abuse. Now that he was an adult himself, a teacher in a position to step in, he felt both the weight of responsibility and the pangs of unresolved guilt. At lunch, Mr. Woodward spoke with Ms. Harmon. They met in the teacher's lounge, a small room with mismatched chairs and an old fridge that hummed noisily. She placed her salad on the table and asked softly, "How's Jacob doing? I noticed he looked upset this morning." Mr. Woodward considered his response, weighing confidentiality concerns against the urgent need to share. "I'm worried about him," he admitted. "He's been showing signs of, well, I'm not completely sure, but it might be abuse. It reminds me too much of my own childhood." Ms. Harmon's eyes widened with concern. "I've noticed he's often quiet," she said. "And sometimes he flinches when someone speaks to him too loudly. A few weeks back, he had a bruise on his cheek, which he tried to hide with his hair." Mr. Woodward nodded grimly. "I need to figure out a way to help him, but I don't want to push him too hard. If he's being hurt at home, we can't just stand by. I don't want him to slip through the cracks like I nearly did." Ms. Harmon leaned forward, her brow furrowed. "We should talk to the school counselor or maybe call the authorities if we're certain. But I know these situations can be complicated. Have you tried speaking to him about it directly?" "I have," Mr. Woodward replied, "but he shuts down whenever I get close to the topic. I think he's afraid." She reached out and touched his arm gently. "I understand your concern. He's lucky to have a teacher who notices. Many don't." After lunch, Mr. Woodward spotted Mr. Fletcher, the janitor, in the hallway. Mr. Fletcher was a kind, unassuming man in his 50s, known to keep an ear to the ground regarding school gossip. He frequently offered a listening ear to students who felt more comfortable chatting with the friendly janitor than with their teachers. As Mr. Woodward walked by, Mr. Fletcher waved him over. "Hey, about that boy, Jacob," he said in a hushed tone. "I heard from a couple of kids that he's really scared lately. They say he doesn't want to go home. I've been working here for a long time, and I've seen that kind of fear before." Mr. Woodward felt his heart sink further. Thanks, Mr. Fletcher. I'm worried about him too. I'm trying to see how we can help. Mr. Fletcher nodded thoughtfully. Just let me know if there's anything I can do. Sometimes the kids talk to me while I'm cleaning up after school. If I hear anything more, I'll come straight to you. Grateful for the support, Mr. Woodward offered a heartfelt thank you. That evening, after the last bell had rung and the hallways had quieted, Mr. Woodward gathered his things and walked to the staff parking lot. As he passed by the main entrance, he found Jacob sitting on the steps, knees drawn up to his chest. The sight of the boy's lonely figure stopped Mr. Woodward in his tracks. He approached carefully, not wanting to startle him. "Jacob, it's late," he said. "Why are you still here?" The boy raised his head, eyes rimmed with worry. I just don't want to go home," he whispered. Mr. Woodward felt his chest tighten. He remembered the feeling all too well, clinging to the safety of school to delay the inevitable return to a hostile home. He sank down beside Jacob and spoke softly. "Is there something happening at home? You know you can tell me." Jacob's lower lip trembled as he tried to hide the quiver in his voice. It's just better here," he finally said. "I feel safe at school." Mr. Woodward weighed his next words carefully. "If things are bad, we can get you help. You're not alone, Jacob." For an instant, Jacob seemed on the verge of confiding in him, but then he shook his head and stood up. "I have to go," he said. "My foster parents will be angry if I'm late." Mr. Woodward watched as Jacob hurried away, shoulders hunched as though expecting a blow. A swirl of conflicting emotions coursed through him: anger at whoever was hurting this young boy, sorrow for the parallel to his own past, and a fierce desire to protect him. He decided that the time for soft inquiry was nearing its end. If Jacob was in danger, the authorities needed to be involved. But first, he wanted to consult with Ms. Harmon and the school's social worker, Ms. Alden, to gather more information. That night, Mr. Woodward once again tossed and turned in his bed, haunted by the images of his own trauma. He saw himself in Jacob, saw the timid glances, the concealed bruises, and the deep, abiding fear of being punished for simply existing. His eyes flew open repeatedly, heart pounding as though he were still the terrified boy he once had been. He clenched the sheets, took several deep breaths, and reminded himself he was safe in his own apartment. Yet his mind remained unsettled, flitting between memory and reality, leaving him with no respite. When morning came, he dragged himself to school, red-eyed and fatigued. Despite the lack of sleep, he resolved to take action. After preparing his lesson for first period, he walked to the school counselor's office. The corridor leading there had a subdued atmosphere, lined with motivational posters about perseverance and kindness. He found Ms. Alden reviewing some case files. She was a dedicated social worker, a woman in her early 40s, with empathetic eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She invited him to sit. "I've had growing concerns about Jacob," he began, summarizing what he had observed. The bruises, the fear, and the boy's plea that school was the only place he felt safe. "I can't shake the feeling that his situation at home is dangerous." She nodded, listening intently. "I've read through some of the notes from other staff members," she replied. "Ms. Harmon has also documented suspicious bruises and changes in Jacob's behavior. I've already placed a call to Child Protective Services to express concern. They're going to look into his foster family, the Langfords. I'll be visiting their home as well." Mr. Woodward exhaled with relief. Yet he knew that a system built to protect children sometimes fell short. "Thank you," he said softly. "Please let me know if there's anything I can do." "I understand how personal this must be for you," she said, her tone warm. "Given your background, it's natural you'd be especially protective. But you know as well as I do that these investigations can take time. If Jacob's at immediate risk, we need to act quickly." He nodded, a grim set to his features. "I'll keep an eye on him, and I'll let you know immediately if anything changes." The following day, Jacob showed up to school with a faint limp. When Mr. Woodward asked him about it, Jacob claimed it was from twisting his ankle during a game of backyard soccer, but the boy's averted gaze told another story. Ms. Harmon pulled Mr. Woodward aside to confirm that she had alerted the principal as well. The principal, a caring but busy man, had nodded gravely and assured them he would support any necessary measures. The entire staff seemed to be rallying around the boy, providing small acts of kindness. Mr. Fletcher offered the boy a candy bar and a friendly chat after school, while Ms. Harmon discreetly gave him a sweatshirt to replace his torn one. Despite these efforts, Jacob's anxiety appeared to be mounting by the day. On a particularly cold morning the following week, Jacob refused to participate in PE. Ms. Harmon, who also oversaw that class, discovered bruises on his upper arms and his back that looked suspiciously like finger marks. When she asked about them, his eyes welled with tears, and he bolted from the gym. Concerned, she immediately informed Mr. Woodward and the administration. A torrent of paperwork followed, along with urgent calls to Child Protective Services. The entire situation escalated further when Jacob, trembling, begged Ms. Harmon to let him stay at the school overnight. "Please," he said, voice quavering, "don't make me go back there. They'll be so mad if they find out someone saw the bruises." By this point, the tension was palpable throughout Brookhaven School's staff. Ms. Alden, the social worker, arranged a visit to the Langfords' home. Derek and Vanessa Langford greeted her politely, though something about their forced smiles made her skin crawl. The house was neat, almost obsessively so, with everything arranged to present a picture-perfect image of family life. She noticed the subtle tension in Vanessa's posture and the controlled tone in Derek's voice. On the surface they were pleasant, but beneath that veneer she sensed a coldness. She asked a series of questions about Jacob's daily routine, his bruises, and how he behaved at home. Their answers sounded rehearsed, as though they had prepared a script. Vanessa forced a sympathetic tone, claiming, "Jacob can be quite clumsy. He's always tripping or bumping into things." Derek added, "We've been trying to help him build confidence, but he's a timid boy. Sometimes he lies about how he gets hurt because he doesn't want to look foolish." As she listened, Ms. Alden's eyes swept the room. She noticed a single photograph of Jacob on the mantel, but no real evidence of a loving family dynamic. No drawings by the child, no indication that the boy had any space of his own filled with personal items. She also noticed how Jacob's foster father occasionally gripped the back of Vanessa's chair, knuckles white. When she asked if Jacob could speak to her alone, Derek hesitated before forcing a nod. Moments later, Jacob appeared, eyes downcast. Under the watchful gaze of his foster parents, Jacob's answers were mechanical, as though he'd been trained. After the visit, Ms. Alden returned to the school and reported her concerns to the administration. While Derek and Vanessa had not openly shown hostility, the undercurrents of control and fear were undeniable. She pushed for an intervention, but the wheels of child protective bureaucracy turned slowly. Still, the concern documented by the school staff and Jacob's repeated bruises prompted an immediate evaluation by CPS. Within the week, the authorities decided to temporarily remove Jacob from the Langfords' home, pending a formal investigation. Jacob was placed in a child shelter in nearby Milford. The news spread quickly among the staff at Brookhaven, with teachers quietly whispering updates about Jacob's situation. Some expressed relief that he was out of harm's way, at least for the moment. Others worried about how the boy would cope, as shelters, although safer than an abusive home, could be frightening places for a child already traumatized. Mr. Woodward felt both relief and dread. Relief that Jacob was out of the immediate reach of those who might harm him, and dread that the boy would lose hope or feel more alone than ever. A few days later, Mr. Woodward received a phone call from Ms. Harmon. "Jacob ran away from the shelter," she said, voice hushed and anxious. "They said he disappeared last night. They've looked everywhere around the facility, but so far, no sign. The staff is worried sick." Mr. Woodward's heart plummeted. He remembered his own flight at a similar age, when fear outweighed rational thought, and all he wanted was to escape the clutches of his abusive foster home. "I'll help look," he said immediately. Without hesitation, he grabbed his coat and set out, combing through the town streets, small parks, and alleyways. He approached passers-by, inquiring if they had seen a boy matching Jacob's description. As night approached, rain began to fall, cold droplets spattering the pavement. Mr. Woodward continued his search under flickering streetlights. The town stores were closing, shutters pulled down, leaving the streets eerily quiet. He turned a corner and found an old playground with a broken swing set. His heart leapt when he spotted a small figure huddled beneath the large slide. "Jacob?" he called softly. Slowly, the shape stirred. Jacob peered out from under the slide, drenched and shivering. His cheeks were streaked with tears and rain. He didn't run this time. Instead, he just looked at Mr. Woodward with eyes filled with despair. I'm sorry," he said, voice trembling. "I just got so scared. They kept talking about moving me to another home. I thought maybe it would be better on my own." Mr. Woodward's throat constricted as he remembered his own desperation as a child. He shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around the boy's shoulders. "Jacob, it's all right," he said gently. "I understand. But you can't stay out here. Let me take you somewhere safe." Jacob sniffled, his tiny body racked with sobs that he tried in vain to contain. "I don't know what to do anymore," he admitted. "I'm scared all the time." Mr. Woodward guided him up gently. "I'll walk with you. Let's head to the shelter. At least it's warm there, and they can help us figure out the next steps." With a bit of cajoling, Jacob finally agreed. Mr. Woodward spoke in calm, reassuring tones on the way back, describing in simple terms how there were caring adults who wanted to protect him. By the time they reached the shelter, the staff rushed out, relieved to see the missing boy return safely. Mr. Woodward stayed with him until a social worker arrived, guiding him through the intake process once more. As the staff thanked Mr. Woodward for his efforts, he saw the exhaustion and resignation in Jacob's eyes. He felt a fierce resolve welling up inside him. He couldn't just walk away and leave the boy to a system that might fail him again. The next day, Mr. Woodward marched into the social worker's office, determination lining his features. "I want to become Jacob's foster parent," he said. "I know it's not a simple process, but I'm ready to do whatever it takes." The social worker, a woman named Ms. Rhodes, regarded him with a mixture of surprise and caution. "Have you been through the certification program? Do you have experience with foster care?" Mr. Woodward nodded slowly. "I was a foster kid myself, so I understand the system from the inside. I also know how critical it is to have a stable, caring environment. If there's any chance Jacob can heal with me, I want to provide that." Ms. Rhodes tapped a pen against her desk. "Fostering a child you teach can raise conflicts of interest," she warned. "But if the court and the agency find your home suitable, it's possible. The boy clearly trusts you. Let's start with a home assessment." In the following days, Mr. Woodward found himself juggling teaching responsibilities and piles of paperwork. He underwent background checks, home evaluations, and psychological assessment. He spent his evenings tidying his small apartment, making it as welcoming as possible. He bought a spare bed, simple but comfortable, and tried to make room in his modest living space. Through every step, he felt an echo of his own younger self, longing for someone to do the same for him. Meanwhile, the school buzzed with questions about Jacob's well-being. Ms. Harmon, Mr. Fletcher, and even the principal expressed their support. Some staff worried that the move was too abrupt, but most agreed that any stable environment would be better than the system's uncertain shuffle. Mr. Woodward's nightmares did not abate. If anything, they intensified. Images of locked rooms and cold voices haunted him nightly, as though the act of stepping forward to help Jacob had dredged up every painful memory. Yet he pressed on, fueled by the conviction that Jacob deserved a future free from fear. At school, Ms. Harmon gently teased him about the dark circles under his eyes, urging him to take care of himself as well. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of waiting, the placement was approved on a temporary basis pending the outcome of the investigation into the Langfords. The day Jacob arrived at Mr. Woodward's apartment was tense yet hopeful. The boy clutched a small duffel bag with a few belongings, stepping over the threshold with wide eyes. "This is your place?" he asked timidly. Mr. Woodward gave a small, warm smile. "It's not much, but yes, it's home. And now it's your home too, at least for a while. Let me show you around." He led Jacob through the modest space. The living room with a worn couch, the kitchenette where a few simple appliances were neatly arranged, and the spare bedroom with its new bed. A small desk stood in the corner, stocked with paper and pencils. "You can use that desk for your homework, or for drawing if you like," Mr. Woodward said. "I got some art supplies if you're interested." Jacob nodded silently, hugging his duffel bag to his chest. Though he wore a nervous expression, there was also a flicker of relief in his eyes. Mr. Woodward placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "You're safe here," he said gently. "If you ever need anything, just let me know." The first few weeks passed in a cautious routine. Mornings started with shared breakfasts: toast, scrambled eggs, and sometimes cereal. Afterward, they walked together to Brookhaven School, Mr. Woodward mindful of maintaining professional boundaries in front of other students. In class, Jacob still addressed him as Mr. Woodward, but after school, they reverted to a more relaxed dynamic. Even so, the boy's nightmares lingered. Late one night, Mr. Woodward awoke to the sound of Jacob sobbing in the spare bedroom. He rushed in, heart pounding, to find the boy curled into a ball, tears staining his pillow. "It's okay," Mr. Woodward whispered, sitting beside him. "You're safe now." He thought of his own nights of terror, how he would have given anything for a gentle presence to reassure him. Jacob clung to him, trembling. "I dreamed they came for me," he said in a small voice. "I dreamed I couldn't breathe." Mr. Woodward's throat tightened with empathy. "I know," he soothed, stroking the boy's hair. "I used to have those nightmares too." He stayed by the boy's side until Jacob drifted back to sleep. Then Mr. Woodward returned to his own bed, tears burning in his eyes, more resolved than ever to protect Jacob. As the investigation into the Langfords progressed, more disturbing information emerged. Witnesses reported hearing shouting from the Langford home late at night. A few neighbors mentioned seeing Jacob with bruises more often than they had ever considered normal, but they admitted they had been hesitant to interfere. A pattern of intimidation tactics and controlling behavior by Derek and Vanessa came to light. Child Protective Services, bolstered by medical reports and statements from the school, built a case against them. Eventually, the matter escalated to a formal court hearing, where the Langfords would face charges of child abuse. For weeks leading up to the trial, Jacob's fear seemed to grow. He cowered at the mere mention of Derek or Vanessa, and nightmares returned with full force. Mr. Woodward and the school tried to bolster Jacob's confidence, assuring him that he would not have to confront the Langfords alone. Ms. Alden explained the court process in gentle terms, telling Jacob that he might need to speak in front of a judge and possibly in front of Derek and Vanessa. The boy's eyes widened at the prospect. "I can't," he whispered. "What if they come after me again?" Mr. Woodward's heart broke at the raw terror in the child's voice. "You don't have to do this alone," he assured him, placing a hand on Jacob's arm. "I'll be there for you. We all will." When the day of the hearing arrived, the courthouse was packed with people: attorneys, social workers, and reporters keen on covering a case that highlighted the failures of foster care oversight. Jacob sat in the waiting area, clutching Mr. Woodward's hand. Every so often, the boy glanced at the door, half expecting Derek or Vanessa to appear and snatch him away. Tension hung in the air, thick as fog. Inside the courtroom, Mr. Woodward saw the Langfords for the first time since Jacob's removal. Derek wore a suit, his face a mask of polite contrition, while Vanessa dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Their attorney argued that Jacob was an unstable child, prone to wild accusations and self-inflicted injuries. The attorney suggested that Mr. Woodward and Ms. Harmon had pressured the boy, leading to the allegations. Mr. Woodward felt his stomach churn at the blatant lies. A doctor who had examined Jacob's bruises provided testimony confirming they were consistent with abuse rather than accidents. Ms. Harmon and Mr. Fletcher both recounted their observations of Jacob's behavior and the suspicious marks on his body. Mr. Woodward offered his perspective, describing Jacob's tearful pleas and the dread that gripped him each day as he left school. But the defense cross-examined, implying that Mr. Woodward's judgment was clouded by his own past trauma. "Isn't it true that you yourself were once abused in foster care?" the defense lawyer prodded. "Couldn't you have misinterpreted Jacob's bruises out of an overactive sense of empathy?" Mr. Woodward tried to stay calm. "Yes, I was abused," he admitted, voice steady. "That's exactly why I recognize the signs. Children don't cower and cry for no reason." Finally, it was Jacob's turn. The boy took the stand, trembling. He looked over at Mr. Woodward, who offered an encouraging nod. Jacob's voice was barely audible at first. He stumbled over words, tears gathering in his eyes as he recalled specific incidents of abuse, harsh words, locked doors, physical beatings that left him too terrified to speak up. The defense tried to undermine his credibility, suggesting he was confused or lying. But in a quivering voice, Jacob found the courage to speak plainly. "They hurt me," he repeated. "They hurt me whenever I made a mistake or asked for something." His testimony, though faltering at times, carried the unmistakable ring of truth. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath. The judge listened intently, scanning Jacob's trembling form. Medical reports, testimonies from teachers, and Jacob's own words painted a damning picture of the Langford. Before the end of the hearing, the judge declared that Derek and Vanessa would face charges of felony child abuse. Jacob's placement with Mr. Woodward would continue under protective supervision, pending any further developments. A sense of cautious relief settled over the group from Brookhaven School. Jacob was safe for the moment. In the days following the court's decision, Mr. Woodward tried to restore a sense of normalcy for Jacob. They returned to their routine, eating breakfast together, walking to school, and gradually turning their attention back to math problems and daily life. Jacob's bruises began to fade, replaced by glimpses of a small smile that appeared when he solved a tricky fraction or received praise from Mr. Woodward. Sleep remained a challenge for both of them, but the nightmares weren't quite as constant. Then, 2 weeks later, in the early hours of a dark morning, the unthinkable happened. Mr. Woodward awoke to the sound of glass shattering in his living room. He sprang out of bed, fear gripping his chest. Before he could reach for the phone to call for help, he heard heavy footsteps charging toward the spare bedroom. He recognized Derek's snarling voice. There was a muffled scream, Jacob's scream. "Let him go!" Mr. Woodward shouted, racing from his room. But Derek's towering form blocked the path, and Vanessa stood near the door with wild eyes, brandishing a crowbar. There was a brief, chaotic struggle. Mr. Woodward was shoved against a wall. Pain exploded in his shoulder as he hit the floor. In the confusion, Derek grabbed Jacob, dragging the terrified boy out of bed. Jacob cried out, "Mr. Woodward!" Mr. Woodward scrambled to his feet, but Vanessa swung the crowbar threateningly, forcing him to back away. He could only watch, powerless, as Derek hauled Jacob out of the apartment. Then Vanessa slipped out behind them, the door slamming shut in their wake. Disoriented and injured, Mr. Woodward stumbled to the phone and dialed 911, breath ragged. "They took him," he gasped. "They broke in." Derek and Vanessa took Jacob. Police arrived quickly, but the Langfords were already gone. A shattered window and scattered furniture testified to the violence of the kidnapping. Mr. Woodward crumpled onto the couch, shaking. He barely registered the officer's questions as paramedics checked his shoulder. All he could think was that Jacob was in mortal danger, recaptured by the very people who had tormented him. The sense of helplessness and dread overwhelmed him. What followed was a frantic search. Amber Alerts were issued, and the local authorities coordinated with agencies in neighboring states, suspecting Derek and Vanessa might attempt to flee far from Hollow Creek's jurisdiction. Mr. Woodward, despite his injuries, tried to assist law enforcement by providing any details he knew about the Langfords, where they might go, any relatives they might stay with. Days passed with no sign of Jacob or the Langfords, each hour stretching the thin thread of hope. On the fourth day, a breakthrough occurred. The FBI had joined the search, dedicating resources to track the kidnappers' movements. They discovered a trail of credit card transactions leading to a cheap motel several hours out of state. Agents moved in, coordinating with local police. Mr. Woodward insisted on staying informed, though the authorities wouldn't allow him to accompany them. The wait was agonizing. Then, at last, a phone call came. The FBI reported they had successfully intervened. Jacob was found trembling in a back room of the motel, physically unharmed but emotionally shattered. Derek was taken into custody after an altercation that left him subdued. Vanessa was also apprehended, accused of complicity in the kidnapping. The harrowing ordeal was over, but the emotional toll would last far longer. Jacob returned to Hollow Creek under police protection. The moment Mr. Woodward saw him, he broke into sobs of relief, pulling the boy into a gentle hug. Jacob clung to him, eyes vacant and haunted. "I thought they were going to keep me forever," he whispered. Mr. Woodward stroked the boy's hair, trying to calm him and assure him he was finally safe again. The next few weeks blurred into a swirl of legal proceedings. Derek and Vanessa faced additional charges of kidnapping, compounding the abuse charges. With the FBI's involvement, there was no question that the Langfords would face a lengthy prison sentence if convicted. Yet the emotional scars they had inflicted on Jacob were not so easily addressed. The boy, once again, found himself living in Mr. Woodward's small apartment, but now he refused to sleep alone. Night after night, Jacob woke up screaming, certain Derek would come bursting through the window again. Mr. Woodward enlisted the help of a child therapist who specialized in trauma. Sessions for Jacob became a lifeline. The boy slowly began to process his terrifying ordeal, drawing pictures of what had happened, speaking in trembling words about the kidnapping and the abuse. At school, Ms. Harmon and Mr. Fletcher offered unwavering support. They encouraged him to rejoin small group activities when he was ready, praising even his smallest successes. "You're so brave," Ms. Harmon said after he gave a short presentation in class, his voice wavering but determined. Mr. Woodward, for his part, struggled with his own feelings of guilt. He berated himself for not anticipating the Langfords' desperate act. But the therapist reminded him that he had done everything possible to keep Jacob safe, and that it was the Langfords who were responsible for their crimes. Over time, the nightmares Mr. Woodward experienced shifted in tone, less about his own past, more about Jacob's kidnapping. But the boy was home now, and they were forging a path toward healing together. As the criminal cases against Derek and Vanessa moved forward, new evidence came to light, including disturbing diaries and text messages that detailed their abusive method. The community of Hollow Creek followed the trials closely, shocked and angered by the cruelty inflicted upon Jacob. Meanwhile, Mr. Woodward formally applied to adopt Jacob, convinced that the only way for the boy to truly heal was to have a permanent, loving home. He wanted to do for Jacob what no one had done for him until it was almost too late. Despite all the challenges, Mr. Woodward approached the legal system with unwavering determination. The adoption process was neither simple nor quick, but Mr. Woodward found an ally in Ms. Rhodes, the social worker overseeing Jacob's case. She had seen how Jacob transformed under Mr. Woodward's care, even in the midst of the kidnapping trauma. The school principal offered a character reference, praising Mr. Woodward's dedication as an educator and mentor. Ms. Harmon wrote a heartfelt letter describing how Jacob blossomed academically and socially when he felt safe. Gradually, the adoption plan cleared the necessary hurdles. Finally, in a small, emotional courtroom gathering, the adoption was approved. Jacob stood next to Mr. Woodward, clutching his hand. The judge, a woman with kind eyes, announced that from that day forward, Jacob would legally be recognized as Mr. Woodward's son. Applause and tears filled the room as Ms. Harmon, Mr. Fletcher, and even the principal, who had come to witness, offered their congratulations. Jacob looked up at Mr. Woodward with a hesitant smile. "Does this mean I really get to stay with you?" he asked, voice trembling with cautious hope. Mr. Woodward squeezed the boy's hand. "Yes," he said, tears shining in his own eyes. "It means you're home. For good." Relief and joy wrapped around them both like a warm embrace. While neither of them believed that adoption would magically erase the trauma, they both understood that it was a powerful step toward building a future free from constant fear. Over the next weeks, Ms. Harmon helped plan a quiet celebration at Brookhaven School. The staff gave Jacob a small party, nothing too overwhelming, where classmates wrote him encouraging note. One girl gave him a card that read, "We're so glad you're safe." Another boy, who rarely spoke, quietly handed Jacob a colorful drawing of two people holding hands, a small heart above them. Jacob clutched those tokens of kindness with trembling gratitude, slowly realizing he was not alone. Back in Mr. Woodward's apartment, life found a more stable rhythm. They developed simple routines that had previously been interrupted by fear, cooking dinner together, reading stories in the living room, and finishing homework in the spare bedroom that was now Jacob's own room. Therapy sessions continued, guiding Jacob through the wreckage of his past. Occasionally, the boy woke at night, crying out from memories of captivity or abuse. Mr. Woodward would rush in and hold him until he calmed, whispering gentle assurances. Over time, those nights grew less frequent, and Jacob's once fearful eyes began to show glimmers of something brighter, hope. One afternoon, Ms. Harmon stopped by after school to drop off some gifts donated by fellow teachers. Books, a board game, and a warm quilt hand-stitched with comforting colors. Jacob examined the gifts with a shy smile, touched by the support he was receiving. Mr. Woodward poured Ms. Harmon a cup of tea, and they sat together, chatting quietly while Jacob flipped through the pages of his new books. "He's come a long way," Ms. Harmon remarked softly. "And so have you." Mr. Woodward nodded, reflecting on his own journey from abuse victim to teacher, and now father. The circle of trauma that had once defined his life was gradually giving way to a circle of healing and love. He wasn't naive. He knew there would be hard days ahead. But he also knew they would face those days together. Some months later, Mr. Woodward took Jacob on a trip to a nearby state park. Just the two of them. They hiked along a winding trail, the trees a brilliant medley of autumn colors. Dry leaves crunched underfoot, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of pine. Occasionally, Jacob would lift his gaze to the canopy above, a small smile curving his lips. In that moment, he looked like an ordinary kid, free to marvel at the world around him, not burdened by the weight of constant fear. When they found a clearing, Mr. Woodward spread out a blanket and they sat, gazing at the surrounding hills. Jacob leaned against him, the sun warming their faces. "You know," the boy ventured, "sometimes I'm still scared they'll come back." Mr. Woodward draped an arm around Jacob's shoulder. "I understand," he said quietly. "It's hard to forget something like that. But the Langfords are in prison, and they can't hurt you anymore. And even if your mind tries to tell you different, I'm here. We have a lot of people who care about us. Ms. Harmon, Mr. Fletcher, everyone at the school." Jacob nodded, tears briefly glistening in his eyes. "I believe you," he whispered. They sat there for a long while, letting the quiet strength of nature envelop them. In the golden light of the afternoon, their two silhouettes merged in comforting companionship. It was a small but meaningful moment, evidence that with each passing day, Jacob was learning to trust, to feel safe, and to believe that a more peaceful future was possible. Over time, as the months turned into a year, Jacob continued healing. His court-appointed therapist remarked on his progress, noting that while scars of abuse could run deep, The consistent love and stability provided by Mr. Woodward had allowed the boy to develop resilience. Jacob began making new friends at school, occasionally joining in a soccer game or studying with classmates. He discovered a fondness for puzzles, delighting in the process of methodically fitting pieces together to form a complete picture. Mr. Woodward, too, felt the shift in his own spirit. While he still experienced moments of anxiety and occasional nightmares, the presence of Jacob in his life gave him a renewed purpose. Teaching math took on even greater significance now that he had a vested interest in shaping not just Jacob's future, but the futures of all the children who might be quietly suffering, as he and Jacob once had. He dedicated himself to recognizing the signs in others, hoping he could intervene earlier for those in crisis. As for Derek and Vanessa Langford, their trials ended with a guilty verdict on both the abuse and kidnapping charges. The judge handed down a lengthy prison sentence, ensuring they would not threaten Jacob again. Though the legal saga was over, Jacob still needed time to accept that they were truly gone from his life. Each therapy session chipped away at the residual terror, replacing it with cautious optimism. Mr. Woodward ensured that Jacob was included in small joys: a school field trip to a local museum, a birthday party for a classmate, and even a friendly math competition between local schools. Bit by bit, Jacob realized he could participate in these events without constantly looking over his shoulder. He laughed more easily, and his academic performance improved. Though he still had occasional setbacks, the overall trajectory was one of healing. And so their lives became entwined in a comforting routine. At home, Jacob helped with small chores like setting the table or feeding their newly adopted cat, a shy tabby named Twinkle. Evenings might find them on the couch, Jacob working on a puzzle while Mr. Woodward graded papers. Sometimes they would simply watch the setting sun from the small balcony, an unspoken bond forming in the quiet moments. In time, Jacob's sense of belonging grew. On a crisp winter day, he approached Mr. Woodward and held up a folded note he found in his desk at school. Inside was a message scrawled in crayons: "We're glad you're here," signed by 3 classmates. Jacob's eyes welled with tears, but a smile lit his face. "It's like they're saying I have a place now." Mr. Woodward hugged him gently. "You do have a place here," he affirmed. "With me, at Brookhaven, and in this community. You're never alone again." Thus, the transformation in Jacob's life stood as a testament to the power of compassion, perseverance, and the willingness of one adult to see a child's suffering. Mr. Woodward, having fought his own demons, found redemption in nurturing a boy who reminded him so much of himself. They both walked forward together, leaving footprints of resilience and hope behind them. Finally, in the warmth of a new day, father and son were able to set aside the weight of old nightmares. While their scars might never fully disappear, they had each other. And in that bond they found the courage to embrace a future defined not by fear, but by the promise of healing. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more.